English 201, Week 2, Part 7. All right, so the poem is divided into three sections, and I'm going to give you the outline. The first, sorry, I got notes here. The first 5 stanzas of the poem, that's the first little 5 paragraphs, are about setting up the funeral and deciding which birds get to go to the funeral and which birds do not get to go to the funeral. And then stanzas 6 to 13 are basically a beautiful poem that is said. Somebody gets up at the funeral and gives a speech about how wonderful these dead birds are because they were so in love, but now they're dead. And then the last section of the poem, which is called Threnos. It's like a separate section. That section of the poem is a different poem read by somebody else at the funeral about how great these dead birds are. And that's it. That's the whole poem. So now that we know that, and again, once you know, and that's all that happens in the poem. That's it. It's a bird funeral with 2 speeches. They decide which birds get to go and what their jobs are, and then there's 2 speeches, and so the poem has 3 parts, and that's what we're going to do. Let's take a look at it. Okay. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree, herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. So for starters, you're going to have some vocabulary issues. Lay here means means song. On the sole Arabian tree, meaning this bird lives on this tree in the Middle East. Herald, sad, and trumpet be. A herald is someone who announces something. To whose sound chaste wings obey. Chaste here means pure. So for starters, it's some kind of command. So somebody is saying this. It's a bird funeral filled. It's all birds. This whole poem is birds. There are birds. The birds are dead, and there's all the people at the funeral are also birds. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree, herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. So all this really means is that we're gonna the bird that has the loudest lay means song. So it means we're gonna find the bird who has the loudest voice or sings the loudest song. Herald, be the herald. The herald is someone who announces something. So let's get the bird that's loudest to announce the funeral. To whose sound chaste wings obey, meaning the pure birds, the good birds, will obey this announcement and come to the funeral. That's it. That's the first stanza. You got to look some words up, and it can be a little tricky, and the word order is strange. It's a herald sad because he's announcing a funeral, which is a sad event. One thing I want to point out, though, is a little metaphor here. Let the bird of loudest lay. So let's find whatever bird is loudest. Announce the funeral. Herald sad because his herald is an announcement, and he's sad because it's a funeral. And trumpet be. Is the bird actually a trumpet? No, it's a metaphor. What 2 things are being compared? The bird is being compared to the trumpet. What does the bird have in common with the trumpet? Loud. Announces shit. Bum, 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 bum. That's it. Metaphor. Nice and easy. 1 stanza, we already got a metaphor. Things are going really well. Okay, cool. To whose sound chaste wings obey. Now, wings there is another metaphor. Because are just wings showing up? No, it's birds. But wings are a metaphor for birds because it's the part of the bird that everybody recognizes the most. So it's a metaphor, sort of like birds are being compared to wings. What do they have in common? They both fly. That's kind of a stupid metaphor, but it's there. It's a fancy kind of metaphor called synecdoche. Don't worry about that. All right, so basically the first stanza is we picked a bird who's going to run this bird funeral, or who's going to announce the bird funeral. Let's take a look at the second stanza. But thou shrieking harbinger. Now I'm going to let you in a little trick here. The shrieking, this is one bird, the one bird that's the loudest bird gets to announce the funeral. This bird, we don't like this bird. But thou shrieking harbinger, foul precurrer of the fiend, augur of the fever's end, to this troop come thou not near. So some kind of bird is not allowed. Which bird? Well, it's a bird that shrieks. A harbinger also announces things, but this thing announces bad shit. Foul precurrer of the fiend. The fiend is Satan. Precurrer means they come first, like first you see this bird and then you see Satan. Augur of the fever's end. The fever's end in Shakespeare's day is death. So there's some kind of bird that's very bad who shrieks, who is a precursor to the fiend, meaning shows up before Satan arrives, and announces death. There's no way to know this from the poem, but I'll tell you right now, you're talking about an owl. We're talking about owls because owls are fucking spooky and owls are evil and they're not allowed to come to the goddamn funeral. My favorite TV show has a whole thing about evil owls. It's called Twin Peaks. And so they say to this, they say to the owl, they're discussing the owls. But thou shrieking harbinger, foul precurrer of the fiend, augur of the fever's end, to this troop, meaning to this group, come thou not near. So this bird is allowed to come to the funeral because it's got a loud voice, and this bird is not allowed to come to the funeral because it's evil. It's bad news. That's it. We got it. Cool. I think we're doing pretty good. And again, you see we're using summary here, right? Foul precurrer of the fiend. It's hard to understand what that means. You got to look up precurrer. You got to think about who the fiend they're referring to would be. But and sometimes you need a little bit of research. You're probably not going to know on your own that that's Satan. But that's the basic. And the owls are considered. You might think owls are cute and beautiful, but they were considered in Shakespeare's day to be real bad luck Halloween animals. From this session, interdict, meaning here interdict means not allowed. So from this session, interdict. So from the funeral, here who's not allowed to come. Every fowl of tyrant wing. Every fowl means bird. Fowl is an old-fashioned word for bird. Interdict every fowl of tyrant wing, meaning all of like the we're not going to allow all the powerful mean birds that eat meat. The tyrant wing, because most birds will eat little berries and little worms and stuff, but some birds, the big ones, will like straight up eat an animal. And they're dangerous, and so they're not allowed to come. This is from this session interdict, meaning from the funeral, we're not going to allow birds of tyrant wing. Tyrant is like a bad king. And kings get to eat meat because they're rich and powerful, and poor people have to eat like grain and porridge and shit. So we're not going to allow into this funeral the tyrant birds. By the way, the Batman comic book that I got this from is called The Tyrant Wing, from this poem. Why? Because the Penguin is a bird-themed supervillain. I shouldn't say the word theme, that's confusing. He's a bird-style supervillain, and so he's like a bird tyrant. So he wants to be a little king. He's got all these followers. So they say we're not going to allow from this session interdict every fowl of tyrant wing. So let's not, the tough, dangerous birds that eat meat, they're not allowed to come, with one exception. Save the eagle, feathered king. So like vultures are not allowed to come, but the one bird that eats meat that is allowed to come is the eagle, because the eagle is like the king of the birds, just like the lion is the king of the jungle. Keep the obsequy so strict. Obsequy is funeral rites. And so they want to strictly get to decide who comes to the funeral and who does not come to the funeral. That's it. I hope you see that you can, if you were to look up the words, you would be able to get most of this. You'd have a little trouble being able to figure out that the precursor of the fiend means comes before Satan. But you know that a fiend is something really bad, and a precursor of the fiend, meaning something comes before something bad, like announcing something bad. That's bad. So you might not know that it's an owl, but you could get the idea. All right, cool. So this is going pretty good. We're almost done with the first section here. We got another kind of bird we're going to talk about. Let the priest in surplice white, that defunctive music can be the death divining swan, lest the requiem lack his right. So we got a little metaphor going on here. Funerals need a priest, right? Now, priests, surplice is what like monks wear. It's like religious holy orders, Catholics and things will wear surplice white. It's like a monk's robes. So they need some kind of bird who's good with defunctive music. That's music related to death. So say, you know who's going to be in charge of this? The death divining swan, lest the requiem lack his right. The requiem is the song they're going to sing. So they're saying they're going to sing songs for these dead birds, but they're going to need every funeral needs a priest. And so they're like, which bird is going to be the priest? Now, priests wear these kinds of beautiful white robes, and they go, you know what? The swan is going to be our priest. It's a little metaphor. The swan is being compared to the priest. What does the swan have in common with the priest? They both wear white. Also, swans were believed to know things about death. And so that's the other thing. You wouldn't know that without research, but swans in hundreds of years ago were thought that they were thought to sing when they die, and they knew when people were going to die, and they were like these special birds. And so that's why we're comparing swans to priests, not only because they both wear white, but because they both know about death. Metaphor. The swan is like the priest because they both wear white and they both know about death. Guys, this is going really well. I will see you in the next video.